Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Dredd presiding. He wasn't a real judge. This is On Trial right here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, and I am your host, your defense attorney, as it were, for the evening, Mr. Mark Radulich. And on the docket tonight, brought to you by the 20th Century Fox studio, now currently owned by Disney, along with Your Childhood. Came out in 1999, based on the novel by Chuck Palahniuk. Ladies and gentlemen, the often misunderstood Fight Club, starring Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and a nicely gothed up Helena Bonham Carter. Really, isn't she gothed up in just about everything? Not these days. These days she's in The Crown, and she's the exact opposite. That's not why we came here tonight. Joining me, prosecuting this little ditty, this misunderstood masterpiece. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Sean, you're not. How do you do, Sean?
Ha-ha! This is Bob. Bob has bitch tits. Hey, you were the one who brought up the Disney connection. It was the first thing that popped into my mind.
I'm just picturing Mickey in Fight Club now. Oh, we were a nation. We were an entire generation raised by women. Oh.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
I am Jack's Monopoly. All right. So, 1999. We were talking about this before the show started. This movie comes out, and it speaks to something which doesn't really blossom, I think, until I think it tapped a vein of something that was there, that was sort of ruminating underneath the skin of society, and then just gushered out in the 2016 election cycle. And I don't necessarily want to get political about it, but
no. In this case, I think it's perfectly appropriate to, because I sometimes asked myself while thinking about this: is this movie just a product of its time? Is it something that could really kind of be seen by a younger generation the way you and I saw it? Mm-hmm. We caught it when it was new.
I definitely think it was a canary in the coal mine. I think it was prescient. I think it unknowingly sort of pointed in the direction of where we were going, because Fight Club is not a celebration of masculinity so much as it is an indictment. But boy, did people not get that. Boy, did people not get that Brad Pitt's the villain in the movie, not the hero.
I get the feeling that the same people who would watch this and think that are probably the very same ones who look at the Joker and Harley Quinn and go, goals, man. Relationship goals.
I strive to be Joker and Harley. No. You're missing on. Never mind.
God, no. I fucking hope not.
But we're gonna break this down tonight. Sean's gonna give you some notes, and I will walk you through what there is as a plot. Let me tell you, I usually save this bit for the end, but let me just give you a hint, and maybe I'll round back to it when we're done with our trial of this thing. I really enjoyed this movie for what it was in 1999, until the reveal that they're the same guy. And I remember I saw this in the theaters, and I remember reacting at the time like I wanted to throw my soda and my penis at the screen.
Oh, okay, wait. Okay, the soda I understand. Why did you feel the need to possibly detach your genitalia and
Well,
let fly?
t- 20 years ago, I wanted to smack my dick into just about everything. I was either peeing on things or smacking my dick into it. That was my form of protest. We didn't have Twitter, Sean. We had smacking your dick with things. Back in my day.
Oh, God, don't patronize me just because I was 17 when this movie came out.
Back in my day, we wore onion on our belts, and that was the style at the time.
Oh, okay, okay, cock-flinging Grandpa Simpson.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't want to get into too much detail here, but the movie, it was one of those where the movie had me, and then in that moment lost me utterly, and it never got me back again. And as people around me for years is like, oh my God, Fight Club is so good, I'm like, nope. This movie stretches credulity to the point where I can no longer accept it for what it is. It's too stupid. And it was one of the many fights I would get into with people. You know, the Black Album isn't the worst album Metallica ever put out. Fight Club isn't the best movie ever made. You know, these were my 2000s, people. I don't look back fondly on them.
Well, look, the Black Album is only the worst Metallica album ever made if you happen to exist in some alternate timeline where Saint Anger blissfully never happened.
You said a mouthful there, Buster. All right. Hit me with those notes, Daddy-O.
Well, you know, as beloved as this movie is in certain circles, you could almost call it a bomb at the time. Critically, it was polarizing. Every critic either loved it or hated it, with very little in between. Fox executives were not fans of it, and in fact, they had to completely revamp David Fincher's entire planned marketing campaign to try to sort of mitigate their expected losses. It kind of came in under the bar at the box office. It was considered both one of 1999's most talked about and controversial movies. The Guardian pegged it as you called it a canary in a coal mine, and you weren't that far off. They said it was an omen that the times they were a change in American politics. Although they did kind of praise it for being visually groundbreaking, which it was. It became massively successful as a DVD release and sort of earned a cult following that only grew in the years that followed. I won't argue with that. I actually owned the two disc, grand, throbbing, masculine fanboy erection, whatever it was, edition of the DVD. And it did contain some pretty sweet special features. Including those nifty little interpolated vignettes that you had on some DVDs at the time, where if you clicked on a certain icon, when it popped up to the screen, it would take you away to a little behind-the-scenes thing or a deleted footage, something like that. It really was pretty cool. And it was a pretty entertaining commentary track as well, which I'll maybe get to this a little bit later, either toward the end of the notes or when I get into my case, but it also includes one of my favorite stories of a change scene of all time. Like, nothing beats this, and I kind of have to grudgingly admire Fincher for it. What the fuck? You know what? As long as I brought it up, I might as well just do it now. The scene in question is the one in which Tyler is recounting to Jack, the unnamed, unreliable narrator, his evening of raucous humpity-bumpity with Marla Singer, and utters the phrase, "I swear the shit that came out of this woman's mouth." Well, it turns out that the original line Marla was supposed to turn to Tyler and say was, I want to have your abortion.
Quick note, it's in Fight Club 2. It's in the comic.
Oh, okay. But
Yeah.
but still, okay, he worked it into that one.
Yep.
But there's still a story to this.
Yes.
Let me keep going. So, Marla, in the original cut, was supposed to turn to Tyler and say, I want to have your abortion. This movie was full of edgelord shit like that. And the executives begged Fincher to change the line. And he kept fighting him, and then finally he made a deal with him. He said, okay, I'll shoot another line, but under one condition. You have to use whatever it is I shoot.
Oh, that
No
makes that
questions
line
asked.
so much
I'm
more
not
delicious now.
No questions asked. I'm not redoing it. You have to use this line. They said, fine, just whatever will get you to change it. So, instead, we get, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. Executives then plead him to go back to I want to have your abortion. And he says, nope. Deal's a deal.
Perfect.
And my God, just I hate using the adjective cringy just because I think it's such a stupid turn of phrase. But there's just so much obnoxious, trying too hard to be cool dialogue in this goddamn movie. Of course, the thing you have to remember is this was Chuck Palahniuk, an openly gay man in 1996, writing a novel that he meant to be sort of his take on Rebel Without a Cause, or The Graduate, the story told in a microcosm of a generation that has done everything they've been told by the numbers and still been left disenfranchised, disaffected, and disillusioned with nothing. No sense of self, no identity of their own, and really no way to fight back and strike a blow of their own at everyone who led them down this path. This was what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be an indictment of nihilism. That mine and Mark's generation, for fuck knows what reason, took it as a hymn of praise. Tyler Durden, instead of being the thing Palahniuk was trying to point to and say, you see this? See this? Very bad thing. Don't be thing. See that thing? Don't be thing. And everybody else looked and said, do thing. Cool.
May I just butt in just slightly here?
Yeah, go ahead.
That is because Tyler Durden suffers, for lack of a better word, from Baby Yoda syndrome.
Okay. I define Baby Yoda syndrome for me as someone who is aware of the memes, but who has not watched The Mandalorian yet.
Well, if you've seen what Baby Yoda looks like, I think we can all pretty equally agree. Baby Yoda looks adorable. It has big puppy eyes. It's a baby, and babies generally induce aw cute from people. It's a rare breed of cat that's like, babies are ugly. One of those people is my father. But beyond him,
I have an ex who would fit into that category probably.
again, rare breed of cat, but they do exist. But it was clearly designed to evoke sympathy based on puppy dog face. And so it doesn't matter what Baby Yoda is. It doesn't matter what Baby Yoda does. Everyone loves Baby Yoda because Baby Yoda is cute. Everyone loves Tyler Durden because Tyler Durden is as cool as the other side of the pillow. He's cooler than Jesus. He wears tight pants and shirts that just don't fit properly, and so when he leans, his belly shows a little bit. He's just charisma personified. And I'm not just coming at this from left field. It says it in the movie. He fucks like he wants to fuck. He da-da-da-da-da-da. He da-da-da-da-da. All of it. He's just super cool, and you know it. And so it doesn't matter that Tyler is the villain. It doesn't matter that Tyler's philosophies are empty and hollow and full of BS. It doesn't matter that if you take Tyler's philosophies to the nth level, you will undermine society in almost unforgivable and irretractable ways. He looks cool and therefore everybody loves him. Baby Yoda.
Okay, I see what you're getting at. And whereas I would also point out, hey, you guys, are you getting tired of the wrestling-based Radulich and Broadcasting drinking game? Hey, I got a new one for you. One that'll get you shit-faced multitudes faster. I want you to go over to the Red Pill on Reddit, and every time you come across some pithy, bitchy, puerile incel whining, I want you to take a drink every time it sounds like it could be culled dialogue from Fight Club.
That sounds like a fun podcast game.
I want you to pour a double if somebody actually directly lifts a line from Fight Club.
We should play that one day. We'll call it Fight Club or Florida.
Fight Club. Because that is what this movie is. It's the story of... Oh, God, there's so many thoughts running through my head, and they all keep coming back to... I can't believe this was written by an openly gay man in 1996, and not somebody with a healthy collection of Limp Bizkit tattoos.
Look, you're like the third person through podcast and other media that I consume that has besmirched the name of Limp Bizkit, and I will not have it. I will break stuff. Do you hear me? Give me something to break.
Just the frosty hair, the constant kind of proselytizing of all these kind of alpha male attitudes, the incessant chest beating, the refusal to accept any responsibility for their shitty destructive behavior. You know, this is the kind of shit that Palahniuk was trying to kind of weave a cautionary tale about. He was trying to warn us. And it just went all right over our head. All of it. And even I admit at times, I kind of loved this movie until I got older, and it kind of fell to the same criticism as when I watched High Fidelity one time too many. and I kind of realized every one of these people is an asshole. Except for maybe the quiet, bald record store clerk. But the rest of you, especially, Rob Gordon and Jack Black's character, assholes. I am sorry I ever looked at this and thought, that is cool. That is the way I should be.
There really should be...
This is a healthy attitude to emulate.
A study via podcast medium or maybe YouTube video of the stream of movies that explored very negative personality types that we utterly misunderstood.
So
there's a lot of them.
So let's move on and take a glance here at the casting, because we almost, again, it's another one where we almost could have had a very different movie. There were meetings with somebody else to play Tyler. Instead of Brad Pitt, y'all nearly got Russell Crowe.
Ugh.
Oh, God. And basically what it came down to was a producer by the name of Art Linson, one who came onto the project fairly late. At the same time, fellow producer Ross Bell was meeting with Crowe. Linson met with Pitt for the same part. Linson had seniority, and so the studio went with his recommendation instead. And as it just so happened, Brad was looking to rebound after Meet Joe Black went tits up. So they signed him to a pretty healthy contract. For the role of Jack, the studio also looked at Matt Damon and Sean Penn, but Fincher was a big fan of Norton's performance in The People vs. Larry Flint.
Oh, great movie.
It really was. It really, really was. And at the time, it was kind of a horse race to get Norton on for his next movie because he was also being sought after for Man on the Moon and The Talented Mr. Ripley. He was cast in The Runaway Jury, which never reached production. And ultimately, 20th Century Fox offered him $2.5 million for Fight Club, but he couldn't take it right away because he was still kind of into Paramount Pictures for a film under his current agreement. And what he did was he kind of worked around it by signing a deal to appear in a future Paramount movie for a lesser salary. Basically, he took a pay cut so that he could kind of briefly kind of renege his deal to go to Fight Club, and that led to, in 2003, Edward doing The Italian Job. And finally, we had some interesting potential alternates for Helena Bonham Carter as Marla. The studio wanted Reese Witherspoon.
No.
Yes.
No, it's not that I don't believe you, but no. No wonder Fox got bought by Disney.
Fincher felt she was too young.
Among other things.
Among other things.
Could you imagine Reese Witherspoon in her
Too fucking blonde!
In her Sherwood Forest, whatever the fuck her name is in the Legally Blonde movies? Elle Woods?
Yes.
Could you imagine Elle Woods turning to Russell Crowe and saying, "I want to have your abortion"? Buh.
Well, now I can't get it out of my head. But hold that thought. Okay, if you're going to keep picturing somebody saying that particular line, you should also know that the filmmakers early on also looked at Winona Ryder.
Okay.
Courtney Love.
Yeah.
And who do you think Fincher's first choice for the part was?
Well, considering we started with Reese Witherspoon, I'm going to go with Jennifer Aniston.
Holy shit, you could not be much further off the mark.
Okay.
Janine Garofalo.
Perfect. Actually, I could have seen any of those as Marla.
Who balked at the film's sexual content.
All right.
But in the end, Fincher ended up giving the nod to Helena Bonham Carter because he liked her in the 1997 film The Wings of the Dove.
In my porn version of Fight Club that I'm going to call Fist Club, I'm totally getting a Reese Witherspoon lookalike and a who was it that almost became Tyler again?
Well, let's see here.
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
I'm totally casting a Reese Witherspoon and a Russell Crowe lookalike as Tyler and Marla.
Hey, Melissa, for future reference, Mark has a thing for wanting to see Russell Crowe fist Reese Witherspoon.
Or the other way around. It really doesn't matter. Why not be inclusive?
He wants Maximus to turn Elle Woods into a hand puppet.
And say, "Are you not entertained?"
Oh, God. Perfect. Just, if that ever gets made, just shut porn down. Smut had a great run, but nothing is ever going to outfill Russell Crowe cunt boxing Reese Witherspoon and then turning to the camera and saying, "Are you not entertained?"
It would be too meta. The world would explode. Reality would collapse. We would have a Crisis on Infinite Earths.
It would be the first porn to ever win a Best Picture Oscar. Anyway.
I hope someone from Brazzers is listening.
Oh, God, we can hope.
Please continue.
Palahniuk was actually a big fan of the film. He felt that the plot was actually a lot tighter than the book. He was initially skeptical if audiences would buy the plot twist or possibly hurl penises at it. Fincher kind of reassured him by kind of countering with, and I quote, "If they accept everything up to this point, they'll accept the plot twist. If they're still in the theater, they'll stay with it." Fincher did remain faithful to Palahniuk's homoerotic overtones from the novel because he felt that they would keep the audience uncomfortable and kind of make the twist just kind of that much more impactful when they did land. And, those twists, including the bathroom scene where Durden is bathing right next to the narrator. I'm wondering if another woman is really the answer we need. It was of course, it was meant to suggest taking some personal accountability, but, obviously, possible gay undertones. And then there's, the scene at the very beginning in which Edward Norton is filleting a gun barrel. But those are kind of the main stories of it. That's kind of the gist of it up to this point. Again, cinematically, visual effects are just few, if any, movies quite like it, and you're not going to hear me say a negative thing about that much. Also, the movie that introduced me to the Pixies.
Where is my mind?
Indeed.
The only other thing that I would point out, it was originally intended to hit theaters in July 1999. Instead, it came out August 6th of 99, which, the studio cited just how crowded the summer schedule was. Outsiders kind of bought into the idea that it was a conspiracy, that it would have been met badly, coming out so close to the Columbine High School massacre. Which, you got to admit, plausible. Let's kind of run down the critical reception real quick. As I said, completely polarizing. There were many who feared that it was going to incite copycat behavior. Some compared it to what happened in Britain almost 30 years prior when A Clockwork Orange came out. The Times said it touched a nerve in the male psyche that was debated in newspapers across the world. The filmmakers had called it an accurate portrayal of the men in the 90s. Critics called it irresponsible and appalling. And in fact, Australian critic Christopher Goodwin said it's shaping up to be the most contentious mainstream Hollywood meditation on violence since Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. There it is again. Roger Ebert was kind of swayed a little bit. He initially called it visceral and hard-edged, but a thrill ride masquerading as philosophy. Which said promising first act, but followed it up with pandering to macho sensibilities, and a third act he deemed trickery. Acknowledged the film was beloved by most, not by me. At the Conference on World Affairs, he was asked to make a shot-by-shot analysis of it, and he summarized it saying, "Seeing it over the course of a week, I admired its skill even more and its thought even less." And that kind of about sums
about sums it up. And ultimately, we always like to talk about the bottom line. As we said, oof, it was not a raging success at the box office. $63 million budget, $100.9 million. So if you were to hear the buzz about it now, it did not do nearly as well as maybe some people might believe. Just to kind of run down the raw, dull numbers of the gross. Opened commercially in the United States and Canada on October 15th, 1999. $11 million in just over 1,900 theaters on its opening weekend. Won the box office, going up against, it was going up against The Story of Us and Double Jeopardy. Be more worried if it had fallen to those two. On average, audiences on CinemaScore graded it a B-. It was kind of argued at the time as the ultimate anti-date flick. Audiences were about 61% male, 39% female, 58% of audiences below the age of 21. Second weekend, it nosedove, 42.6% in revenue, bringing in only $6.3 million. Grossed only $37 million from its run in the United States and Canada, and another $100.9 million in theaters worldwide. So that earlier number was kind of inaccurate. It kind of came to a parting of the ways between 20th century studio head Bill Mechanic and Rupert Murdoch, which led Mechanic to resign. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think that's about it for the trivia track. It's got an interesting backstory, and again, you'll hear me say there are things about the movie that I certainly respect, but it's one where, again, I think the theme of my argument is going to be it gave its audience way, way too much credit.
So we begin with Edward Norton's character, the narrator. We will call him the narrator, though, as Sean said, he does a lot of the I Am Jax, XYZ. In Fight Club 2, he's known as Sebastian, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the narrator, when we meet him, he has a gun in his mouth. He is being held by Tyler, and they are discussing how they got to this point. And so then the movie is told from the point of view of flashback from the narrator's point of view. He works as an insurance claim adjuster. He travels all over the United States examining the leftovers from car fires, etc., etc. He is a single white man living in a nicely IKEA-furnished condo. But what he also has is a seriously bad bout of insomnia. He cannot get to sleep. And he is starting to get sick, as you will do if you do not get decent sleep in short order. So he finds himself at a testicular cancer support group, which is where he meets Meatloaf's character, who is Rob Ball Paulson, also known as Bitch Tits, but we'll find that out later. Here he is able to a degree, open up. He is taken in by the group. He is hugged, he is cared for, and he cries, and that night he goes home and he sleeps like a baby. After several rounds of this and adopting more support groups into his schedule so that he can continue to get the help that he needs, he discovers that someone else is also going to cancer support groups of various types, and her name is Marla, played by Helena Bonham Carter, as we said earlier. And Marla is the deep, dark reflection of himself in that she is a reminder that he's faking it. He is not dying of cancer. He has no cancer. And that he's doing this for purely selfish reasons, which means kind of like kind of like not being able to pee in front of another person. He can't cry. He can't do what he needs to do so that he can sleep at night while she's there, because it is a reminder that he's a big fat phony. A phony. A big fat phony. So, after much haranguing and haggling, they agree they're going to split the week. It is around this time, after they have come to an accord, that on a trip, the narrator meets Brad Pitt's character, Tyler Durden. Tyler Durden makes homemade soap and sells said soap. They have an interesting conversation, and to this day, Tyler has one of the funniest lines that I continue to repeat, which is, "And now the eternal question, which one do I give you, the ass or the crotch?" A line I have repeated a lot over the years. The narrator goes home to his condo, where he has found that it is done blowed up. Having no place else to go, he calls Tyler. They meet at a bar, and at the end of said meet, after again some cajoling, Tyler agrees to let the narrator stay with him at his place. And it is at this point, after having 3 pitchers of beer, they wander into the parking lot, and a question is asked. How much do you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? It's a question I ask my son on a daily basis. Then I pick him up and I throw him on the couch. So they proceed to have a fist fight, because really, how much do you know about yourself unless you've been in a fist fight? Then they go home, and Tyler is living in an abandoned house. And there's a long series of sequences of them just living together, and this is where we get to know Tyler a little bit. Tyler is a night owl. He is somebody who works a bunch of random gigs. He is a waiter. He is a film projectionist. And what he likes to do with those films, he likes to splice shots of genitalia in them, especially if they're children's films. What a delight. This sort of guerrilla terrorism, commercial terrorism, is a thing in Tyler's life. And so the movie goes on from there. Eventually, their parking lot escapades blossom into a underground bare-knuckle boxing club, fight club.
Like you do.
Like you do. Because really, what doesn't eventually blossom into bare-knuckle boxing, really? I work in a jail. There's plenty of bare-knuckle boxing going around. We call it domestic violence. Anywho. So yeah, they open up. They start an underground bare-knuckle boxing club in the basement of the bar where they first hung out. And there's a sequence where they talk about the rules. You don't talk about Fight Club. If it's your first night, you have to fight. Only 2 people fighting at a time, etc., etc. So it's to a degree civilized. And then there's sequences of various fights that are going on there. It is at this point that Ed Norton runs into Marla again. And, she's like, "Where you been? I haven't seen you at the support groups." And he was like, "I've been doing a thing." And she works her way into their lives, despite much to Ed Norton's chagrin. She and Tyler start sleeping together, which is where you get the really just a spectacular line. "I haven't been fucked like that since grade school." Just fantastic. How she wasn't given at least a nomination for an Oscar, I have no idea.
Change the line back. No.
Really, was it any wonder Fox got bought by Disney? The company was run by monkeys fucking a football. Anywho, So, from fight clubs and whatnot, we start to evolve into welcoming some of these ne'er-do-wells in this club into their home. There's sequences of guys just kind of being mentally tortured on their porch before finally being allowed into the house, that sort of thing. And this is where they start doing societal guerrilla terrorism pranks, things like pick a fight with a guy in the street, or pee into someone's soup. Just different homework assignments is what they are called. This starts to go sideways when, in an accident while performing one of these, where they're supposed to blow up a piece of artwork and have it cascade into taking out a franchise coffee shop, a Starbucks type of thing, it ends up getting Meatloaf's character killed. And they do a great sequence here where they're like, we gotta hide the body. We don't want to get arrested or anything. And Ed Norton's like, hey, Jesus Christ, he's a human being. Don't you understand? This isn't about hiding evidence. We have to properly deal with this person who we got killed with our antics. And they utterly in a meta moment, whereas the audience misunderstands the movie, so do the actors misunderstand the plot, the characters rather. They say, yes, and in death we have a name, and his name is Robert Paulson, which gets repeated as this thing expands nationwide, which is hilarious to me. This is where we start to see that Ed Norton, the narrator, can't quite reconcile what's happening around him with his own whereabouts. And he starts going on a bit of a hunt for the truth. And he sees a bunch of plane tickets from various places. And so he goes to these places, and what he realizes is that in these moments where he's not conscious, in these blackouts that he's having, Tyler has been busy setting up fight clubs and terrorist organizations across the United States. During all of this also, there are incidents where Marla is around and things are okay, and suddenly he's just a giant dick to Marla, and Marla can't make heads or tails of what's going on with our narrator. We'll get to that in a moment. So, it all comes to a head with this plot to take out a series of skyscrapers. These skyscrapers are financial institutions, they are credit card data centers, and the object is to take everybody back to zero, put everybody on an even keel, because debt is the modern slavery. It is the chains of man, you see. It is holding us down, and so if we wipe the chains, if we break them, then we will be set free, don't you understand? So we're going to blow up a bunch of credit card buildings. And of course Ed Norton says, well, that's insane. We shouldn't do this. But it turns out, no matter where he goes, nobody can be trusted. Everybody's in Fight Club. They are all Borg. They are one. Resistance is futile. It is here that and he tries to send Marla away because he thinks she's in danger. And it is at this point that the audience and Ed Norton come to the realization that he and Tyler are the same person. He has utterly disassociated and created this alternate persona going all the way back to almost the beginning of the movie, including the scene where he beats the shit out of himself in the scene with his boss, in the office of his boss, so that he can manipulate him into paying him to stay at home, which is my favorite scene of the entire movie. Anyway, so yes, the big reveal, Tyler and the narrator are the same person. He disassociated, created this alternate persona who is his just id gone wild, basically. It is all the things he wants to be and more projected into this other personality that has been taking over and doing all kinds of nefarious deeds. And so what does one do when your alternate personality takes over? You shoot it in the fucking head. That's what you do. And so he does. He shoots himself. Just enough to stay alive, but just enough also to kill the alternate personality, because that's how you treat schizophrenia. Bullet to the head. But it is too late. Too late for apologies, and too late to stop the nefarious deeds. And so 4 skyscrapers go kablooey as he and Marla hold hands and watch. Finn.
Mercifully, Finn.
Your witness, sir.
All right, I was waiting for you to say it. So, let's get the niceties out of the way first. Aesthetically, Fight Club is a goddamn lot of fun. I don't have a negative thing to say about what a trippy thrill ride this is through Jack's head. It's gorgeously shot. It's disorienting. It truly sets itself apart as being sometimes almost more graphic novel than film. I'm pretty sure that anybody who read Fight Club prior to this I'm pretty sure that none of them went into this movie, and what they saw was anything like the little narrative that played out in their head as they turned each page. So hats off for that. The score by the Dust Brothers is superb, because no traditional Hollywood score would have done justice to what this movie was attempting. In terms of tone, in terms of story, in terms of just fitting this world. And just the same, I don't think it would have been quite as effective in terms of setting mood if you would have just gone the Quentin Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez route and just packed the film with kind of cherry-picked top 40 favorites from various eras, and kind of cool B-sides, stuff like that. It's a dark, moody, murky electronic sensibility for most of the movie. And again, I can't compliment that highly enough. The performances really are outstanding. I mean, everybody clearly goes into it, and again, for as flawed and volatile as this and kind of polarizing as this story may be, you can't argue they bring the characters gloriously to life. Looking at pure performance, you can't really say a bad thing about Brad Pitt as Tyler Durden. Least of which, you can't say that he wasn't memorable. I give Helena Bonham Carter credit, because up until I listened to the commentary track on the double disc DVD, I had no clue she was British. Did not know that. Blew me away. Ed Norton's Ed Norton. Say what you will about what a reported colossal bad dragon dildo pain in the ass he is behind the camera. When it's go time, he's on. You can't point to too many bad Edward Norton performances. You know what you're getting. Meatloaf pretty well demonstrates that he has some surprising, serious acting chops that kind of supersede the appeal of just the initial jaw drop of looking at him and going, "That's Meatloaf." He's downright lovable. You feel for him when he dies, despite the fact that I'm not sure he quite eclipses a combined 10 minutes of screen time in the entire damn movie. Jared Leto, well, we love Bart. He's there. He's a pretty blonde kid, gets the shit kicked out of him. Bunch of years later, he would be one of the only people to ever play the Joker so badly and make such an ass of himself that Warner Brothers would just take one look at him and go, yeah, no, we're going to go another way. We're going to go the Joaquin Phoenix way. But, well, and really, I admire what the story is trying to get across. Again, Polnick and Fincher and Jim Uhls, they all meant well in terms of trying to tell the story of kind of a lost culture. As I said so many times, the first culture to be raised entirely on the first generation to be raised entirely on marketing and television, and look what's become of them, and look what could become of them if we don't quite get a handle on things. Like the idea being, go forward, find a way to change things, but fuck, don't go this far. But unfortunately, that's about the point where Fight Club starts giving its audience way too much credit. And really, if you want to see the first proof of that, look no further than the dialogue. Look at the quotes that everybody cherry picks out of context whenever they talk about this movie. They just sound so much like, who the fuck actually talks that way? Oh god, one of my favorites. And reading this the other day, I'd wondered for the longest time where it was that I first heard people derisively use the term snowflake. Now I remember. You're not special. You're not a beautiful and unique snowflake. You're the same decaying organic matter as everything else. We're all part of the same compost heap. We're the all-singing, all-dancing crap of the world. Who the fuck talks that way? The things you used to own, now they own you. Let's see. Oh, you're not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You're not your fucking khakis. You're the all-sing... Oh, yeah, you're all-sing. Okay, never mind. What else?
You are not your fucking khakis.
You're not your fucking khakis. At the time, my life just seemed too complete. Maybe we have to break everything to make something better out of it. Okay, it's a weird dichotomy in my head when I read some of this dialogue, because it's like I can imagine two different people saying it, and they almost couldn't be farther apart on the spectrum. Like at one side, where is it? You're not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car. Okay, there I hear white guy with ratty, nasty, filthy-looking dreads. I can smell him a football field away. Owns every 311 album. And wants to give me a full artistic treatise of each of them to assure me that no, they don't fucking all sound exactly the same.
He's also wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt.
Yes, thank you. We cannot forget the Che Guevara t-shirt. Nowadays, he's probably got a vape pen practically seared to his hand. And anytime somebody confronts him in a public space about not wanting to have that shit blown up their nostrils, they go, it's not actual smoke. It doesn't actually harm you. Yeah. Bruh. Yeah, probably refers to everybody as bruh. Not even that kind of more, from the diaphragm, from the nuts, that DDP, bro. Bruh. That sound that every time I hear it, it makes me think that sounds like somebody's trying not to throw up in their mouth a little bit. Bruh. Bruh. Like they're about to heave up their White Claw all over my lap. But then on the other hand, you then have Frosty Tips, roided up Jim Bro, has at least one tribal tattoo, an unsightly shade of Hulk Hogan orange, with half their hair being Surfer Dude blonde. Have seen the Fast and the Furious to be able enough times to probably be able to recite it the way children recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And just look at Tyler as this ass-kicking dude, bro. Tyler Durden doesn't take shit from anybody, bro. That dude is harsh. He's a bad motherfucker. Like he's some kind of intended iconic action hero. Like he's fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin. When really, what it is, it's a mix of the two. Because when you read the dialogue, it sounds like the kind of shit that 21-year-old philosophy majors on almost any college campus will start spouting at a kegger to try to get into an 8-year-old freshman's panties. Probably sometime after butchering a litany of Bob Marley, John Mayer, and Dave Matthews songs on an acoustic guitar that no one has been merciful enough to brain them with. That is what this movie's dialogue sounds like. It's infantile. It's overly simplified. It's childish. And somehow the movie doesn't get across just how fucking self-serving and masturbatory nihilistic philosophy usually is. Usually, it almost always is. This was what the original story was meant to get across. It wasn't meant to be a celebration of this chest-thumping, destroy the system from the inside out by brute force masculinity. Again, this was a gay man saying, don't do thing! Thing bad! It's... Jesus Christ. And I get it. There's something very valid to the tale it's trying to tell about sort of what happened to our generation and what happened to us. And there's even moments where, yes, Tyler Durden is almost admirable. Like when he manages to convince this convenience store clerk to get off his ass and go back to school to become a veterinarian. By kind of putting some skins in the game for him, by putting his life at stake. You almost kind of go, oh, well, okay, maybe he did achieve something with that. But then you realize the big problem with this, and I don't say this lightly as someone who does not go in for the whole blame the movies, blame the TV, blame the video games. I don't go in for that typically. But then you watch this and you realize how many fucking assholes who were about my age and coming into their 20s when this was at its most popular kind of revered this and Boondock Saints on roughly the same level, and you kind of got the impression hearing them talk about them that they took them a little bit too seriously. Like, nah, dude, those movies were right. I had friends who used to do that obnoxious Facebook thing where they would just take quotes from this movie out of context and just post them with no quotation marks and no attribution on their Facebook status. And comes across it's supposed to be so profound and deep. And they're making a thinly veiled, coded dog whistle statement to their fellow Jim Bras. You know, none of whom have outgrown Rage Against the Machine yet.
Hey, objection. I love Rage Against the Machine.
You can love Rage Against the Machine, but even you've got to admit there's a point where you also kind of look at Rage and go, you raised a generation of dipshits.
Oh no, Rage Against the Machine generally produces giant eye rolls for me. I still love it.
Yeah. But that's kind of what we ended up with, and I hate to indict what is otherwise great film craft for existing. But the fact is, I don't think the movie quite made it obvious enough what it was trying to warn the world about. Because you're absolutely right. It was the canary in the coal mine. But the problem is, for all intents and purposes, while the canary was over here gasping and dying and panicking and probably trying to warn us, hey, toxic danger! We are all over here just kind of, we are Homer Simpson going meow 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 meow. You know, it gave its audience too much credit, and in that case, if anything, I happen to think Fight Club is more than a little bit guilty of negligence. So, all right, I will turn it over to you.
The prosecution's main charge against Fight Club is that, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that it wasn't good enough to not be misunderstood. That its message lends itself to confusion and misinterpretation. And I would stand in defense of this movie against that charge. It's not Chuck Palahniuk's or David Fincher's fault that we're a bunch of toaster ovens. It is not Chuck Palahniuk's or David Fincher's fault that nobody realized just how angry and disaffected and marginalized, right or wrongly, people felt even back in 1999. And I'm not in any way defending or prosecuting those people. I don't think anyone realized that there was this undercurrent of people in this country. I mean, if you go back to 1999, we're a year removed from the 2000 election that's going to send this country spiraling into an endless social civil war where people who tend to lean conservatively in their beliefs and people who tend to lean progressively in their beliefs are going to call the other one un-American traitors. I don't know if anyone even saw that one coming. So you'll have to forgive the artist involved in thinking that in a country of filled with liberal arts colleges and free education, that the general movie-going audience aren't half retards, and and will be able to follow the bouncing ball as it goes from, here's a character who's clearly a car salesman, clearly just oozing. I'm doing the gold dust motions as I do this. Oozing, dripping with slimy charisma, that he's offering up devilish, Faustian nuggets of nihilistic philosophy. And the conscience of the movie is saying, this is a bridge too far. This is a bridge too far. That's downright wrong. This is utterly unacceptable. Holy shit. I don't even know how I got to be a part of this, and I am ashamed of myself. Nobody saw the audience ignoring that guy who spends almost the entire movie saying all of those things and focusing on the devil. That's not the movie's fault. There is clearly a 3-act structure in this movie. There is clearly adversarial tension within the dialogue, because as the prosecutor correctly pointed out, yes, you have these sort of childish gumball machine philosophical nuggets being bandied about hither and thither from scene to scene. But if you listen to Ed Norton's counter dialogue, he's in most direct opposition to that. Even in scenes where he's not in opposition, he's almost disconnected from what Tyler's saying. Tyler is saying, burn the world down, and he's going, have you seen this article about I'm Jack's cancer-riddled colon? He's... This is a story, and I think people missed all of this, but this is a story about somebody who... And it goes right back to the initial premise, which is he can't sleep. He has insomnia. If you start to read into the movie and dig a little bit, and that might be hard for some people, I understand. So follow me, Star Wars fans. You have to think a little bit. At Mark Radulich on Twitter, at me.
Oh, fuck that. At Comer Codex. Come at me, you fucking neckbeards.
You have to understand that this is a character who, at his most base level, is struggling to connect to the world around him. This is a character who followed all of the steps, did all the things he was supposed to do. He got an education, he got a job, he got a place to live. He set himself up socially, but he feels alone. These are the things that he talks about in this movie. The line about, the one thing you can put a circle around in this movie that I think that should have resonated the most, but utterly gets either passed over or utterly misunderstood, is the scene where they're talking about they are a nation of men raised by women, and when he says, I don't think another woman is the answer, what he's trying to say in that conversation is that these are people who are, in how they were raised and what they were led to believe, they get to the point that they're supposed to get to, and they still don't feel connected to society. There's something missing. And they search for it in all the wrong places. The answer isn't beating the shit out of another guy in a basement. I hate to tell people that, but it's really not. I love combat sports as much as the next person, but fight in the basement, not the answer. So the point of it is, though, and the thing that I really want to hold up as a defense is that as the movie is structured, all of these points get made. You have to be paying attention. You have to be open to it. But they're all there. The fact that it got misunderstood as much as it did isn't really the movie's fault. It did its level best to bring you along. The fact that you went kicking and screaming and sticking your thumbs in your ears is not its problem. Beyond that, as far as defending the movie in and of itself, it's a tragedy. I understand that blowing up credit card buildings might sound like a fun idea, and certainly we've carried enough credit card debt as a modern society that you're like, you know what, maybe we should. Okay, that's the point, though, is that the movie has a tragic... There should have been one more scene, and I'm not sure if this got cut in editing, if it got cut through studio notes, or... I don't know. It feels like there should have been one more scene of him sort of having to deal with the consequences of those actions to drive home the point that it isn't about blowing up credit card companies, it's about taking personal responsibility for your own life. And if you do feel disconnected, if you feel disassociated from life, if you're feeling unfulfilled, then go find the things that bring fulfillment. You go through a personal journey of self-exploration. Stop blaming everybody else. Stop blaming IKEA. Stop blaming society. Stop blaming your own bad, stupid choices. It's on you to find the happiness that you need to sleep at night. Might be hard for people to hear, but that's the truth of it. And I think the movie tries to get there, but this is a dramatic presentation, not a TED Talk. You have to fill in the blanks. And again, it's not the movie's fault if the general audience isn't really capable of that. Just as an aside, these are all competent actors. Nobody gives a performance in this that takes me out of the movie. I think in terms of painting sort of a dreary picture of things, I think the movie does a good job with its color palette. I thought the Fight Club scenes itself were choreographed pretty well. I really enjoy Helena Bonham Carter's character. Normally that kind of character irritates the shit out of me, but I think in this one, she rides that line of detestable and sympathetic to where you don't want to see her get thrown off a building. So good on the director and good on the performer for not driving the audience, at least me, insane. That's it. I think excuse me, the biggest problem with this movie is in and of itself is a fine picture. And left to its own devices, I think tells a very neat story. I think it's marred retroactively by how the audience took it and ran in the direction it was never intended to go. Your final words, sir.
You know, in lieu of actually trying to kind of rebut what you're saying, I'm going to kind of just sort of try to segue into the part at the end where we just kind of
discuss things a little more openly.
Sure.
I think one of the biggest problems with this movie is simply that it has aged horribly.
Because of the current social climate?
I think it's maybe aged worse for people who are my age and yours, because nowadays people may watch it, and I would imagine it would be one of two things. Either, they wouldn't necessarily, as you said, understand that it's trying to say thing bad, and it would take how impressively stylized it is as being a kind of endorsement or encouragement. Okay, fine. It wouldn't be a Radulich in broadcasting show if we didn't bust out a wrestling reference. It's like how you'll sometimes see WWE crap out some lazy, controversial heel character that mainstream media will resoundingly shit upon, and you'll feel almost like you have to get out sock puppets to explain to these supposedly intelligent, insightful, intuitive people that it's a bad guy. It's a bad guy. You're not. No, the idea is not for people to root for them.
Yeah, this comes
They're
up.
supposed to be disliked. As a matter of fact, thank you for giving us exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, that comes up a lot on Damn You Hollywood, where we feel like some critics just think movies should be devoid of tension and antagonists.
No,
Again, like they're supposed to be TED Talks.
It's the kind of thing where I think that would probably be the way some people would take it, and you would then have to explain, no, we have to acknowledge that this evil in the world exists if we're to understand how to deal with it. You have to acknowledge that it's there. It's for the same reason why when you put out a multi-disc set of classic Looney Tunes, you don't cut out the racist ones. You don't pretend that these things didn't happen because that's insulting to the people who suffered from them. You tell it like it is. Whereas on the other hand, that's one way it would be viewed, and others would probably take it and view it as, well, shit, yeah, this is a good point. This is actually how we got to where we are right now. But in that sense, again, it's very much a product of its time. And when I say it doesn't age well, again, it's back to the high fidelity thing. From about when I was in high school up to about my late 20s, up until about the time when my relationship with Alexis ended, I looked upon that as being pretty much, for fuck knows what reason, and I don't say this with any modicum of pride whatsoever, almost like an instruction manual. like this was a suggestion. This is what being a cool adult male was supposed to be like. I want to apologize to everybody that I summarily annoyed the piss out of for more than 10 years with my bullshit. Well, okay, it was kind of the same thing with Fight Club. I hadn't really kind of let the realities of it sink in, and now that I'm older and a little more realistic and I'm looking at it a little bit more, I look at it and I say, God, you are not a masterpiece. Far from it. You are misunderstood in the worst possible way.
That's
You're
why
not. You're not. It's like you're not a bad movie that people just didn't get at the time. No, you're actually a good cautionary tale.
Yeah,
Completely went the other way with.
That's why I think now that I'm not in the position of having to defend it, I think what the movie lacks is it lacks a complete third act. It resolves the split personality issue stupidly, but there's a lot I'm willing to forgive a movie for. You can hear me talk about that on our review of Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot of things I'm willing to say. Well, within the context of what this movie is supposed to be, Hobbs and Shaw, I'm willing to forgive. I'm willing to forgive utterly ridiculous, fantastical elements. On the other hand, it doesn't resolve the idea of, and I think this is where the movie kind of falls on its face. If someone says, "Come on, people aren't as dumb as you're making them out to be," I think you have to put some of the blame on the film. Here's where the blame, I think, squarely fits. In that the movie at the end, because the movie ends the way that it does, which he succeeds in blowing up the buildings and he's just sitting there watching, there really needed to be driven home the idea that what he did was a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And I think you can convince people that blowing up buildings and being sort of a deconstructionist in your worldview is good if there's no consequences for what he's done.
Exactly. You absolutely nailed it. Is the total lack of consequence. You can't look at it and say, well, but he murdered Tyler. That's not a consequence.
Right.
You've slain your imaginary friend. Boo fucking who? You pay no material cost for what you have for the financial and social upheaval.
Right.
You have just inflicted, and that's the thing, nobody actually stops Project Mayhem. It goes off without a hitch, and in fact, it's played off with this extremely peaceful and almost serene moment where
they're playing the Pixies at the end, right? They're playing "Where Is My Mind."
Holding hand and
they're playing "Where Is My Mind" by the Pixies at the end as they're holding hands.
They're standing there and they're watching all these financial centers through which the fiscal lifeblood of the world probably flows, and it's all crumbling to the ground, and you just probably destroyed millions of lives. You fucking self-centered cretins. And nobody pays a price for it.
Right.
Nothing. Before anybody says it, before anybody fucking says it, you don't get to say, well, in Fight Club 2,
But I'll tell you what, in Fight Club 2, he still gets away with it because it's 10 years later or however long it is, and he didn't go to prison. He's been taking meds to do away with Tyler, and he's married to Marla, and they have a kid. It isn't 10 years later, and he's finishing off his sentence in Oz.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that is the major flaw of the movie, because let me get this out now, because if I do an entire podcast on this movie and I don't explain why I wanted to throw my dick at it, I'm going to feel bad about myself. So, even before I got into the mental health field, and this isn't going to be, this isn't going to be my TED talk on how schizophrenia and dissociative personality work, because nobody wants to fucking hear it. I will tell you it doesn't work the way it does in Fight Club, but that is entirely fictional.
Oh, no.
But putting that aside for just a second, the expectation is that you're willing to believe the conceit that these are the same guy, and that all of this stuff that he projected himself as Tyler doing, he actually did, except that some of it is physically impossible. And even if I go, if you're willing to accept certain things in fantasy and science fiction, you should be willing to accept that even though it's physically impossible, you still, buy into the twist, the M. Night Shyamalan twist that they're the same guy. Okay, but even still, the fact that he's so able to fool Marla till the very end of the movie, and there's too much. There's too much in what he's able to do, and in the amount of time he's fighting with himself. That, especially as when the Project Mayhem stuff started, now there's too much of annoyance. When it's just him and Tyler, I'm willing to buy a lot of this. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to buy he doesn't sleep, and that he's and that when he's Tyler, he's actually just working night jobs, and okay, I'm willing to buy a lot of that stuff, and because there's nobody there to call him out on it, he can live in that delusion. Okay, I'm with you so far. When he starts having a perpetual audience around him, and no one ever calls him out on it, no one ever catches him, it should have, because the movie has a lot to deal with, it should have been given away a lot sooner, but it can't, because then you don't have a movie. You don't have a third act.
Yeah. May I interject something real quick?
Sure.
A little note of personal experience here. And
help me out here, because I'm not a mental health professional, but I'm just kind of going off what little I know. It seems like what they're kind of portraying here is DID.
Yes.
Yes, dissociative identity disorder.
Correct.
For those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, go watch the Showtime series United States of Terra. Because, number one, it is 3 seasons of awesome television. And number 2, it's not a bad depiction of what living with DID is actually like. Okay.
Something that I usually don't talk about very much because it's, a part of my life that I kind of try to keep still a little bit private, no matter how many curtains I've kind of peeled back over the years on this show. One of the things over the years that I have used, it's an actual psychotherapy method that I kind of taught myself, not knowing that it was an actual thing at the time, is something called internal family system.
It's one in which you kind of compartmentalize your personality a little bit into these kind of, identifiable, kind of dedicated parts that serve one or two specific purposes. You acknowledge that, and you're able to almost kind of communicate with them on a certain level to better understand yourself. I kind of have a thing like that I practice, where I can kind of sort of dial into those specific parts that I've compartmentalized. In part because I have terrible anxiety, nasty depression, and moments when my thoughts are going a million miles per hour, telling me a million different things, and I kind of can't zero in on one. Okay. Those times when I kind of zero in, I kind of give one part the wheel because I need to be really focused on one particular task, it doesn't work the way it happens in Fight Club. I'm fully aware of everything that is happening. I am completely lucid. I am not another person. It flat out does not work like this. I mean, it would be almost borderline insulting if it weren't for the fact that what they're trying to get across is so fantastic that you couldn't take it seriously in the first place. But yeah, that whole notion of he just has no idea the entire time of what's going on because it's all Tyler. Tyler's controlling things. Tyler's controlling my body. No.
Not to the level that he's disagreeing with it. I deal with people having hallucinations and dissociative disorders and whatnot on a fairly regular basis. Mm-hmm. And you're right, there is some. They are to a degree cognizant of what's happening to them.
Yes.
Do people have command hallucinations to self-harm? Sure, all the time. Can people have hallucinations that are drug-induced that end in self-harm? Absolutely. They're so cognizant of it. The full-on blackout, you're a different person, it's rare, but it does happen. But to the extent that he's able then to live a normal life, basically, and go about his daily routine, and it's only happening... The problem is it's too neat. And I guess, thinking back to when I first saw the movie, I think my biggest problem with it was I didn't feel like it was necessary. Like, if the story you're telling is you have the devil saying, society and the social contract is all BS and we should all just be fucking animals living in caves. Cool. Okay. And then the other guy going, hey, I just didn't think maybe owning a coffee table was a great idea. And so they fight. I think I had bought into the movie up to that point, and I saw sort of this yin and yang philosophy kind of having at one another, and that was enough. That was enough. And having not read the book, I didn't know that was coming, and so it's like, I think I can put it into words this way. you had me with the central conflict of the movie between these two warring philosophies. You didn't also need the element of, oh, he's also fucking nuts. Now you're telling me, now you're basically telling a different story. You're talking about this guy is fucking insane. And that now all the conceits and all the philosophy that the movie spent so much time on didn't matter in the first place, because the real story here is a story about a man descending into madness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what drove me crazy. It's like this movie couldn't decide what the story was. And I would have to read the book to kind of get the gist of why Chuck Palahniuk went that route. But I know when I watched the film, I was like, I fucking hate this. Because you had a good story with what you had. Resolve that story. It's like, we just got through the Christmas season. I don't know if anyone's ever watched like little kids open presents. But if you don't handle it in a structured format, it's just fucking chaos. It is madness, I tell you. No one even knows what they're opening after a while. They're literally just shredding paper. And boxes are flying everywhere, and it's cacophonous noise that would drive Slayer out of the room, as this is too fucking crazy for me. And I feel like that's what the movie became at that point. It's like you don't know what the central narrative is anymore. You're trying to resolve way too many things, and you've lost me entirely. And I think that's why I got so angry and was like, fuck this movie. Because it's like, you're telling one story, and then suddenly you're telling me a different story, and you're not really resolving the previous story, and I'm just supposed to accept that. And your transition from one story to the other is so jarring and so awkward that now I've lost interest in what I'm watching, and I just want it to be over. Does that make sense?
And you know what? I had never thought of it that way. In terms of actually asking yourself, so are you saying that he wants to obliterate the social contract because he's mentally disturbed, or because he's disenfranchised?
Right. It's very confused.
I mean, which one should I kind of be meditating on more?
Right.
Or do I want to kind of consider that I don't think you really understand how mental illness works?
Well, no, I will tell you that a lot of Hollywood doesn't know how mental illness works. That's how you get movies like Anger Management. But, yeah, I feel like you had a lot to say with this movie. Just fucking say it, resolve it, and let's move on. Do a different movie about... It was funny, I was asking my colleagues at work who were a little bit closer to having gotten out of school than I am at this point. And I was like, hey, remember Fight Club? They're like, yeah. I'm like dissociative identity disorder doesn't really work that way, right? From what I remember. And they're like, no, it doesn't. That movie's terrible. Woof. And then somebody brought up Split. Now, I haven't seen it. I saw Glass. And I got the gist of what Split was. But somebody was telling me like they couldn't even get through, like somebody who was like a mental health professional couldn't even get through Split because it was too stupid. You know, like if you don't know that that's not how that really works, but you kind of want to see, but you're just, if you're just willing to kind of watch James McAvoy do a bunch of voices and sort of this tour de force performance, it's fine enough. But if you're an actual mental health professional, it's hard. From what other people were telling me, it's hard to watch that movie and take it in any way seriously because people don't actually act that way. Which again, why it's not a meditation on mental illness as such. It was a horror movie, but yeah, I just sort of wrap up this discussion. I don't know why. And now that I'm saying this out loud, I really want to look into this. I don't know why Chuck Palahniuk felt the need to muddy up the narrative with he's also a nutter. But it does, I think, undercut what he was trying to get across in both the book and the movie.
Yeah, I think Pollock knew kind of what he was trying to say. And again, he meant well, and I'm stretching a little bit in indicting the movie for not kind of for giving its audience too much credit. But at the same time, when you really do sit down and think about it, it botches everything in such an egregious way that it really starts to feel like wasted potential.
Yeah, I think there's a good movie. There's a great Fight Club is a good movie. It doesn't stick the landing, I think is how I want to say this. But I think there was a great movie in there that just got strangled in the crib because both Polinick and David Fincher got too cute with the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said what pretty much needs to be said about it. Just when you watch it, appreciate it as kind of the big, splashy feast for the eyes and ears that it is. I mean, respect the performances, but acknowledge that this movie, and I would even dare say probably not the novel, are probably neither remotely as intelligent as they think they are.
And for the love of God, after this, let's not talk about Fight Club.
Yes, the best rule about Fight Club is in 2020, let's not talk about Fight Club. let's we don't talk about American Beauty either, and there's a good reason for that too.
And more to the point, let us never discuss The Shortcut again.
Oh, bless you for busting out one of my favorite Simpsons references.
Yeah, I only said it like 6 times on the Rise of Skywalker review. Throw it on a t-shirt, Mindy. All right. So that's our on trial for the month of January. But if you're like, hey, I enjoyed being called a toaster oven, when are you guys getting back together again? Well, we're going to do a special presentation of Long Road to Ruin because Bad Boys 3, otherwise known as Bad Boys for Life, comes out on the 17th. We're going to do a Damn You Hollywood for it on the 21st. And so in honor of that, I thought, since I couldn't decide which one we should do an on trial for, I said, fuck it, let's do them both, and we'll dust off Long Road to Ruin again. So we've got that coming up on January 23rd. And then in February, we will do an on trial for the 1998 epic masterpiece, Lost in Space. All right, what do you got going on in your neck of the woods there, Sean?
I've had an interesting night. Funny thing, I actually had to bail on a stream because I was reminded that I had a podcast tonight. My initial plan was that I was going to go and jump right back in at twitch.tv/ComerCodex, ComerCodex, to go and finish up my competitive Overwatch placements now that I am actively looking for a team and need to kind of throw my training into overdrive. But now that I have heard that Tupe Fiasco decided to bomb the fuck out of an Iranian military leader, I'm seeing advice urging people to possibly maybe go fill their gas tanks up before the markets open in the morning, and I'm kind of thinking about it. But in any case, as it stands right now, it's about 10:30 p.m. Central Time. I'll be probably back online in about an hour and a half. But generally speaking, since I now realize this is recorded, I am live streaming from 6 to 9 p.m. Central Time, usually Tuesday through Thursday at the aforementioned twitch.tv/ComerCodex. However, I stream from 8 to 11 p.m. Central Time on Friday night and from 5 to 9 p.m. on Saturday night over at twitch.tv/Hunters of Artemis, the esports guild of which I am an extremely proud member. To keep better track of all my online streaming exploits, please follow me on Twitter at ComerCodex.
All right, court is now in recess. We will see you soon on the next, I said, Long Road to Ruin for Bad Boys. For Sean Comer, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.